So with Halloween Ends right around the corner, we finally now have an official synopsis as to what is to be expected in the upcoming film, as apparently enough there seems to be a lot going on, in which in the grand scheme of things there actually might be some things that we aren't seeing on the surface until we actually see the movie, as it almost appears as though now, after 4 years following the events of Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills, it would only appear as though Michael Myers had now gone ghost in not being seen by anyone within Haddonfield. As joining me right now to further tackle the subject of the official synopsis for Halloween Ends is my good friend and YouTuber Mark and I. Now Mark, the official synopsis for the upcoming Halloween Ends movie goes as follows, as of course you guys can see here on your screen. The synopsis starts off with, I quote, 4 years after the events of last year's Halloween Kills, Laurie is living with her granddaughter Allison and is now finishing her memoir. Michael Myers hasn't been seen since, which again now goes as far as to beg the question, whatever happened to Michael since, as it goes on to continue. Laurie, after allowing the specter of Michael to determine and drive her reality for decades, has decided to liberate herself from fear and rage and embrace her life. But when a young man, Corey Cunningham, is accused of killing a boy that he was babysitting, it ignites a cascade of violence and terror that will force Laurie to finally confront the evil she can't control once and for all. So Mark, this is a little strange because the question now becomes whatever happened to Michael Myers following the events of Halloween Kills, especially if we know that Michael's intention and goal was to go home from the get-go. Then the million-dollar question then becomes whatever happened to all of the law enforcement within Haddonfield. Were they able to survey the area in finding him? Were they able to go inside of the house in gunning Michael down? I find it a bit strange that Michael hasn't been seen since the events of Halloween Kills, and what I wanted to ask you, as well as everybody else down the comment section below, is do you think that perhaps maybe there is something more that we aren't seeing on the surface right now that kind of puts into question as to what Michael had been doing this entire time? Because based on all of the trailers, based on all of the screenshots that we have, it's not like Michael had gone about by changing his clothing or his mask. The guy looks literally the same as he was 4 years ago, so we know for damn sure he didn't go to a hospital to treat his wounds. What has he been doing? So my question now becomes, is there something more that we aren't seeing, perhaps maybe involving another killer or something of the sorts that sparks Michael to come out of wherever he might be hiding and finally now having to come about by resurfacing in facing off against Laurie Strode one more time? What do you think is going on based on the overall synopsis of what is happening, and do you perhaps maybe believe that there might be another doppelganger or somewhat of a copycat killer that's trying to imitate Michael ever since Michael had gone ghost in not being seen? Do you think that perhaps maybe this is somewhat of a logical approach to the story, or do you think that perhaps Michael had kept away for a very specific reason that has yet to be revealed until we see the movie?
Okay, so some of the information that you shared with me about like the 4 years, how only one is going to survive, how like there's a young man named Corey Cunningham accused of killing a boy he was babysitting. This is all new information to me. And immediately my mind started racing into like the possibility that maybe there's a supernatural aspect to all this after all. I mean, there's no way for us to truly know what's going to happen until we see the movie, or unless there's a leak or something, right? But I think speculatively, based on the information we're given, there's some very interesting wording here and details from all this stuff from Gordon Green. And one thing that one of my first thoughts was, okay, as you pointed out, maybe there's more than one Michael Myers, because that would explain why he seemingly survives all these crazy situations that would kill any normal man. And it doesn't really make sense if he's not supernatural, how that could be. So the only logical explanation for a non-supernatural entity to survive all this is that there's more than one. And I don't know how the fans would feel about that, because obviously like Michael Myers and Halloween are synonymous with one another. Like having a different person embody that would be really, I think, I feel like that might irritate some people, but I don't know. I'm not sure how the general audiences would feel about that. Also, the other thing is it makes you wonder, like, maybe they can sort of apply logic to it by saying like, oh, like it's more than one person that embodies Michael Myers. Maybe they don't have their own identity or own real name, and maybe like they identify as Michael Myers and they're all like nameless people that are part of some cult. Because in the original franchise, it kind of went off the rails with supernatural stuff, like the Cult of the Thorn and all that stuff. Like there's a lot of different things that kind of just went crazy to sort of explain how he survived all the time in order to make more movies, which, you know, say what you will, like it is what it is, but there's definitely more, I think, clever ways to do that. Now, the other thing I was thinking of is what if Michael Myers is a spirit or something and he possesses people? So maybe there are people that don't realize that they're being possessed. Maybe he's some sort of entity or phantasm or some like specter that's like haunting that house, and he like, I don't know, maybe he takes over and possesses people or something. I don't know how people would feel about that either, but that's immediately where my mind went after hearing some of these things, that's the possibility. More than one person as Michael Myers from a non-supernatural point of view, or it is a supernatural thing and he's possessing people. Now, the other thing is they were saying that only one person is going to survive, which means that obviously Laurie's going to die. Because, I mean, they sort of gave it away. This is Jamie Lee Curtis's last movie, so only one's going to survive, so obviously it's not her. And if they're leaving it open for more movies, Michael has to live. And so that's obvious. They sort of spoiled that in a way. They shouldn't have, in my opinion, they really shouldn't have worded it like that. Should be like, oh, it's her last film. That was kind of dumb. Because then that just sort of confirms like, okay, obviously like she's, you know, she's the one who's going to die here. And then by saying that like, oh, like we leave it open for more movies. Well, of course you will, because this is a franchise that like no movie franchise is going to be like, okay, this is a story we want to tell. We're done. Like it just doesn't really happen like that. If there's money to be made, then the movie studios and executives and all that stuff, they are going to try to find a way to squeeze more dollar bills out of it. And if they're already talking about like the future of the franchise, how the rights get changed over to, you know, a different studio or housing or whatever, like there's already plans to continue this with more. So I think the only way that you do that is you can't just be like, oh, Michael just got super lucky and he's just survived. There has to be a bigger picture to it all, something that we don't know. And I don't seem to recall ever hearing anything since the first movie that the idea was they wanted to remove the supernatural element out of it. I think they just wanted to say like, okay, a lot of those movies, like, yeah, they're fun slasher films, but they weren't exactly good and they didn't really stay true to John Carpenter's like original. So we're going to remake it in our own image. But they never specifically said, hey, we're not going to do a supernatural thing. And up until now, it just seemed like, okay, Michael's crazy and his motivations are he just wants to kill people. But like, what's the why? Like, there really isn't a true definitive why from the original movie or this one. And it also begs the question, if you were going to say like, oh, he's crazy, he just has that drive and motivation, well, why did he stop for 4 years? What's the point to that? Like, why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense. All this chaos and carnage and you wait 4 years? I mean, yeah, on one hand, you can say like, okay, he waits until like a Halloween to do this, but it doesn't exactly say from the line that we were looking at. So the official plot synopsis for Halloween says, a young man, Corey Cunningham, is accused of killing a boy babysitting. Like, it doesn't specifically say that happens on Halloween. Maybe that's a given because of the title of the movie. But it makes you wonder, like, is there a certain, like, time frame that Michael has to, like, go after people or he tries to kill people? Like, is it, like, every fourth quarter, 7 years, 4 years, like, the moon is out on Halloween? Like, is there some sort of, like, I don't know, reason or timeline that he has to follow? It's hard to say. Like, a crazy person with a reason isn't exactly crazy. You know what I mean? So I'm at a loss. I really don't know what they're doing here. I really don't know what the goal is. I don't know where they're going to take this. But the only thing I can think that sort of fits with what we know now is that there's more than one person who's dressing up as Michael Myers, and there's more than one, or he's like possessing him. Because I was thinking, like, in the scene where Michael was caught in the fire and then he gets out of it and he survives, I'm just thinking, like, what if maybe one of the firefighters got possessed by Michael Myers and he went in there and he, like, put on all of Michael Myers' like clothes and then he carried on? Because Michael couldn't go through all that stuff completely unfazed. Like, that just doesn't make sense unless there's a supernatural part of it. Like, I get that there's always the talk of like adrenaline, like that guy who fell 10,000 stories, like after his parachute wouldn't pull and he lived, or that old woman who lifted the car off of her granddaughter, you know, whatever, all that stuff. Like, those are things where it's like, yeah, the human body is capable of great things, but like everything Michael has done, like, that's just not, I just don't buy that. I don't see it being probable that adrenaline is a reason why he's able to pull off everything that he was able to pull off. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I'm at a loss, but I think they have to introduce a new supernatural part of this. Otherwise, there's not really going to be a way that they can explain this that would make sense. But either way, man, I don't know. This is a weird one. I have no clue what they're doing now. This new set of information is a complete revelation, and it really begs the question, like, what are their plans for the future? Because it also seems like the way that they want to end this movie and this trilogy is to leave it open intentionally for more. And how do you do that without Laurie? And what is Michael's motivation without Laurie? Because it seems like the other movies, yeah, Laurie was in, Jamie Lee Curtis was in some of those, but it wasn't really always about her. And it seems like now they really are focusing on a grand, bigger picture that the audience has not pieced together yet. It seems like there is meaning, there is a purpose, there is a rhyme and reason to why he's doing what he's doing. It's not just, hey, I'm trying to finish what I started all those years ago, because you don't wait 4 years to do that. And you certainly don't drag in this Corey Cunningham character, who seems like, I think, a whole new character to the franchise. It's really weird. I don't know. I definitely do not know how they're going to do this, but I'm more curious and intrigued than ever before.
Well, I think it's also interesting because John Carpenter also said that if the movie ends up making money, which of course from a corporate standpoint, you want the film to make money, that's the whole point of putting out a product, then they're going to consider making sequels. Now, we don't really know what they mean by that, but I think more so now than ever, Michael Myers may in fact actually end up surviving this by the end, and just because this is Jamie Lee Curtis's last run as Laurie doesn't necessarily mean that she's going to die, I think, because you can ultimately have at least one of them kind of ride off into the sunset with their head held high, you know, in this case being Laurie Strode, and for Michael to kind of fade in the darkness. That's assuming that they don't end up using some kind of a cult or a doppelganger-like killer or introducing another mental patient, but I think that by the end, it's kind of insinuated that Halloween is going to continue, which we are going to be talking about in another video after this, but I think that when looking at the grand scheme of things, when you kind of put 2 and 2 together, I think that by the end of it, it's likely that Laurie is going to die by this, but at the same time, people are so divided because with the way David Gordon Green and everybody behind this movie had basically propped up this movie, they said, and I quote, yeah, one of them without question is going to go down and stay down for good. So what are your initial thoughts by going into this film in knowing the fact that we might be seeing a cult, we might be seeing somewhat of a doppelganger, we might be seeing a conclusive and warm, heartfelt kind of ending with the good guys winning, or we just might go into this movie seeing Michael tear through everybody again? What are your overall expectations, especially with what we see and know based on the overall synopsis going into this film?
This reminds me of a conversation you and I had like several weeks back. We were talking about, like, at the time, the given information we had suggested very much so that Michael was going to be the one to die, because I think Jamie Lee Curtis was sharing on social media, like, all about, like, how much of a badass fight sequence there's going to be, and you know, they're going to go out with a bang. And so I think you and I were both on the same page in regards to thinking, like, okay, like, Laurie's probably going to sacrifice herself and her and Michael are going to die, and that's going to be the end of it, and then we won't see Halloween movies for a while until they do, like, some sort of reboot, because it didn't seem at the time like they really wanted to do sequels to this new trilogy. It just didn't, that wasn't exactly, I don't think you nor I were thinking that was what their end result and end game plans were. They just didn't really seem like it at the time, but it sounds like now that is the plan, that they do want to do more. And so there's a couple things there. First, you and I discussed the possibility of, like, okay, like, let's say Laurie does kill Michael. Let's say that happens, and they want to do more movies. How do you do Halloween movies without Michael? And then I think we were just talking about, like, it would be kind of cool if maybe we got to see some other characters in the universe, like Dr. Loomis talking about maybe like an anthology series where he's dealing with other, like, psychopaths or serial killers or something like that, because that would be interesting. I think some people would find that to be a very fun way to look at it, story-wise, continuing without Michael while maintaining a shared universe within Haddonfield and Michael Myers or whatever. But also too, at the same time, I think a lot of people are sort of getting kind of tired of shared universes and crossovers and all that stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, I think they're still cool, but I don't know if a lot of other people still think they're cool. I feel like there's definitely some fatigue in that regard. But if they are planning on doing more movies and one of them is going to die and Jamie Lee Curtis isn't coming back, I don't think they're going to, like, recast Laurie Strode at this age, because Jamie Lee Curtis is, you know, how old is she? How old is Laurie? Like, you don't recast at that point. It just doesn't make sense. It seems like this is her last hurrah. She's gonna die, and that's it. And maybe she does take Michael out with her, but the spirit of Michael lives on. So I think there's some very clever wordplay with a lot of these promotional materials, the plot synopses. I think all these things are worded and crafted in a way to really sort of like tease something that people are gonna go like, oh, aha, like after the end of this movie. Michael may be dead, his body may be gone, but perhaps they want to continue on with the spirit of Michael Myers. And I think that might be a literal sense, not like an allegorical or metaphorical sense. I think literally, if they are going to do a supernatural thing, it very well could be that it is a spirit of Michael Myers that has somehow survived all these years, but transferring from person to person. Now, as far as like the cult thing that we talked about, like it's hard to say. Like you can't really, there's no way for us to know 100%. So this is all speculation, obviously, and whether you like the idea or not, you just have to keep an open mind that these are things that we're just considering with what we know, and that anything's a possibility. That being said, I think that if they were going to pay homage to the Cult of the Thorn or whatever that was all about before, I think that they might answer a lot of questions about that if they were going to do that, right? In the next movie. And I don't know why like what they're all about. Maybe there's like some sort of sacrifice thing or some sacrificial ritual or rites or something that they had to do or whatever. Maybe someone was out for revenge, controlling like the spirit of Michael Myers, or I don't know. I'm not saying they're all good ideas, and I'm not saying that I would want to see that, and I'm not saying that's gonna happen. I'm just saying that these are the potential possibilities of when you involve a cult. Like, what do they want? Like, think of any other entertainment material you've ever seen. What is the reason for a cult? Okay, they have an end means, an end goal. Like there's something that they're after. Is it revenge? Is it a sacrifice to their dark gods? Like, who knows what that is? Either way, when that cult was first around, regardless of why they were there, it was a very strong supernatural thing that worked. Like it was demonic, it was black magic, it was real. It wasn't some Scooby-Doo made up bullshit where it's just like lights and mirrors. Like it was an actual like supernatural thing that was going on. So I don't know how you would do that here, or if that's even what they want to do. But if they did do it, I can see it being like, hey, like the spirit possesses. Maybe we have multiple members in this cult, and maybe they find it to be a great honor to carry on the spirit of the shape. Because I think that's the other thing too, is like Michael's name, the shape. Like, what does that mean exactly? He's just a man. What does it mean? Is he taking the shape of evil? Is he taking the shape of revenge? Like, what exactly are they talking about? Is it a metaphorical or literal shape? Like, I think it would be a very interesting plot twist to be like, he takes the shape of whoever gives their soul up to our dark magic gods or whatever, right? Again, not saying this is what I want. I'm not saying this is how it should be. I'm simply saying these are just things that they could do with it to take things in a more interesting direction. Doesn't mean that you're gonna like it, doesn't mean it's gonna be good. It's just different. But I think that would be something that they could do, is like if they were gonna showcase like how Michael survived, okay, maybe in the movies they show like, okay, when the screen or when the camera's not focusing on Michael, it's focusing on someone else or whatever, you see that maybe there's another member of the Cult of the Thorn or something like that. They're standing nearby, and in case the other person isn't able to carry out their mission while being the harbinger or vessel of Michael's spirit, and maybe they go in and just take over immediately to carry out what it is that they're after. The purpose of killing, maybe it's a certain amount of people that need to die on Halloween, maybe it's people related to that house, maybe it's people that have seen Michael's true shape, I don't know. But I do certainly think that there is one part of this where I think you're right. I really don't think that Michael is truly after Laurie, which is a weird thing, I think, to consider and to say, because he certainly has been, in some sense, been after her. But I do think there is some truth that he's not exactly like going after her like we initially once thought. I don't know exactly why he's pursued her so far, but for the 4 years of absence, it's clear that he has other priorities, and we don't know what those are, because obviously up to this point, she has been his priority. So it's hard to say exactly what his motivations are now if it's not just killing Laurie and then, you know, moving on with stuff. But as a killer, as a psychopath, you know, you just kind of wonder, like, if you're just crazy and you're trying to kill people, like, okay, like that's maybe all the explanation is needed. But it sounds like that's not the case. It sounds like there is a much bigger picture here that the audience has not picked up on throughout these movies that are going to be answered at a later point, especially if they want to make more movies. And there's a reason why Michael's living, and it can't just be because he has, you know, superhuman adrenaline. I think there's something supernatural about it, whether it be possession, whether it be some sort of cult-like thing, or maybe it's not necessarily supernatural. Maybe it's just like, you know, your run-of-the-mill like cult, but it's not like supernatural in any way. It's just, oh, like we believe this and we're carrying on the spirit, which is like the idea of Michael Myers, who is the shape of evil on Halloween, and we want to like sacrifice people to our fictitious gods or something. There's a lot of different elements to that. I think that you could claim could be a possibility to fit within the realm of Michael Myers, because it's all about the tone and the presentation. But I don't know if it's like the best course of action. I certainly don't think it is, but I don't know what they're doing. There's so many things now where I'm just really surprised, and I don't know where they're taking it now. The fact that they're going to do more means Michael lives. I mean, that's obviously a dead giveaway, and this is a money-making franchise, so they can't just kill him off and say we're done with it. That's not going to happen. But it also sounds like they're not going to reboot it, because at this point, like, how could you? Like, if you were going to reboot this, like, you can't really do that anymore. I mean, think of how many Spider-Man movies we've had. Think of how many Batman movies we've had. And I think you could argue that, like, we haven't had nearly as many as there are in comparison to Halloween. And those franchises, like, introduce Batman without an origin story, introduce Spider-Man without an origin story. So I have to imagine that people would be exhausted of seeing, like, the Halloween story again. I don't think there's really any way to do it better now. I think that's it. I think they've sort of reached the end of all the things that they can do with an origin. So the only thing they can do at this point is just to continue. But it can't just be a mindless slasher film either. I think people want substance more. I think people want to be intrigued. I think people want to have, they want to be surprised. I think they want a plot twist. I don't think people really just want to see, like, okay, it's the exact same movie we've seen 100 times. Like, we just want to see more. I don't think that's what people want. And I'm just saying that based off of what I've seen online and sort of what I've experienced myself. But again, I can't really speak for everyone. That's just what it feels like. That's what I feel like myself. But I don't know. There's definitely way more questions now than I've ever had before, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing how things wrap up this time.
And you know, I think I'm with you on that, because I'm very curious to see how this is going to end, because we know that down the line they're going to make more Halloween films, but I think that for this specific storyline involving said characters, they should kind of wrap it up and maybe do something else, but who knows as time progresses. But let us know what you guys think about the synopsis and where Michael had been this entire time within those last 4 years. Once more, thank you all so much for watching, guys. Thank you all so much for your time. It's where, if of course you guys are new to the channel, then I do encourage you guys to go on over and smash that subscribe button and turn on all notifications by clicking on the bell icon. That way you guys never miss a single video that is posted onto the channel. Hit the video up with a big fat thumbs up by slapping that like button, and to that we'll be seeing each and every single one of you down the comment section below and in the next video. Take it easy, guys, and have a great day. Peace!